We told everybody that this was going to happen. When Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania came out and people praised it, the people in the media said, oh my gosh, it's the biggest opening in Ant-Man history. You knew that wasn't the whole story, but that's the one they tried to tell to everyone, despite the fact that it came in nearly $60 million under the global projections, despite the fact that this movie had a higher budget than the previous two Ant-Man movies, and despite the fact that it needed to make $600 million worldwide just to break even. Marvel, Disney, the shills in the media, they didn't want to be honest about how disappointing opening weekend was for this movie. Well, now here we are. Just like we said would happen, here we are with a massive, biggest Marvel drop of all time. Quantumania is said to have the MCU's worst second week box office drop ever. And now here we are on Sunday, and it's official. A 70% drop for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. This is the problem. This is what we've been saying, that unlike what MCU movies used to do 5 years ago and have a decent hold and make a lot of money internationally, that's not happening anymore. So you can't take these inflated opening weekend numbers and assume that it's just going to track the same way, because it won't. It hasn't. Doesn't matter if it's Multiverse of Madness. Doesn't matter if it's Eternals. Doesn't matter if it's Black Widow. Doesn't matter if it's Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever, Thor: Love and Thunder. We've seen the same trend with all of them. And now it's happening with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, but it's worse than we've seen ever in the history of the MCU. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania reaches $364 million worldwide, on way to $500 million plus final. I like how they just dropped that there, admitting that the projections for this movie have now dropped to just over $500 million worldwide. For those of you keeping track at home, with a $200 million production budget, with a massive marketing budget, including a, tens and tens of millions of dollars Super Bowl ad, this movie needs to make at least $600 million worldwide to make its money back. And now they're admitting that it might fall $100 million short of that. And they're just going to, throw it out there casually. What an absolute joke. Coming out of its second weekend, Disney Marvel's Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania has grossed $363 million globally. Of that, 167 is domestic and 196 is from the international box office. The sophomore frame was 46%, coming in 50 cents behind last week's show, which was a lower than projection, but not the worst they've ever had. Congrats on not being the worst they've ever had. And then they make excuses. The same theories from last week in Offshore start to continue to apply. Early critical scores dampen want to see sci-fi of the Star Wars ilk as a hard sell in some Asian markets, and the gap between Marvel movies and China may be a challenge. More will be borne out over the coming weeks as several studio movies are due for release. Just a recap of all the different places. And they say, you know what? It just didn't have as good of a name as Cocaine Bear and the Jesus movie that's out. That's why it did so poorly. All the excuses in the world for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And then when we look at this, it's already fallen off well short of that shaded area that's the projection, the normal path that something would take based off the opening. This is going to be potentially falling $100 million short of profitability. And worse than that, remember what all these idiots said. All these morons that talked about it's the biggest opening in MCU history. How can you say it's a disappointment? All of you fucking idiots out there, what are you going to say if this movie not only doesn't hit $600 million, but barely cracks $500 million, which would be the same as Ant-Man did back in 2015, back when average ticket prices were something like $8 a piece. And it wouldn't even come close. Right now, it's not projected to get anywhere close to Ant-Man and the Wasp in 2018. Remember what everybody said about this movie, that Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, it's kicking off Phase 5. It's so important for the future. It's setting up Kang as the big bad villain. He's even worse than Thanos. You guys don't even know. You have to see this movie. It's the most important movie since Endgame. The result is nobody goes to see it. How terrible for Marvel. This should put them in full-blown panic mode right now. Because this movie that they have branded as so important that they've chose to let off Phase 5 with, this movie, in all likelihood, is going to lose money. And not just some money. It's going to lose a lot of money for Disney. This is absolutely pathetic, but it's everything we said was going to happen. If you watch channels like mine, we were telling you exactly what would happen. I even predicted the second weekend. I said it's going to be somewhere in the $30 to $35 million range, like a 68% drop. Ended up being even worse than I thought by a couple percentage points. This is embarrassing, but this is the new standard for the MCU. This is Disney, this is Marvel, and this is the dying Marvel Cinematic Universe.